Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, regardless of, irrespective of where you're joining us from. We're delighted to have you join us for this session. I want to welcome you and thank you for spending this time at the Recovtech Project Symposium. We're delighted to have you here. We'll do our best to make this an insightful session. My name is Nosa. I am the project director for the Recovtech project, and presenting with me today are members of my team from BFA. So we have Matt, we have Kevin, and Michelle, and also Sarah from CCAF will also be joining us. I'd like to express my thanks to the Mauritius Africa Fintech Hub for hosting us. You've been a joy to work with, and thank you for this opportunity. So in our session today, the Recovtech Project Symposium, we will be demonstrating solutions for MSME recovery and inclusive growth post-COVID-19. This project is implemented by BFA Global for the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance and sponsored by FCDO. So BFA, we are an innovation consulting firm that applies financial and digital innovation, venture building and investment expertise to improve the resilience and well-being of underserved people in emerging markets. So thank you once again. So we'll start off, I'll give you a quick run through of the agenda so we have a sense of what to expect. So we're going to start off introducing the team, giving you a little bit of background, and then we'll go into the proof of concepts and validation. We'll have the demos, and then we'll give you, the timeline of how we got to where we are, and we will close out by asking people to express interest in meeting with our specialist after this session, and then also with the Q&A. So that's what we can expect from today. All right. So let's get straight into it. Great. So this is the Recovtech project team on our side. So aside from me, we have Michelle, who's our regional coordinator. Maybe you guys want to wave so they can know who you are. So we have Michelle, who's our regional coordinator, Shivani, who's the project administrator, Matt and Kevin are our technical leads. And we also have Matt and Julia, who have given us awesome technical support from Fintech Sandpit. Recently rebranded as Maya One. And speaking of partners, we have to mention our key partner and implementer of this project, CCAF. And with that, I'll be handing over to Sarah, who will introduce her team and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Nosa. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all, wherever you may be. My name is Sarah Ombija, and I'm the regulatory researcher for Sub-Saharan Africa at the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance, or CCAF for short. Now, CCAF is an interdisciplinary research center based at the Judge Business School at Cambridge University. And our work revolves around the study of alternative finance, including financial channels and instruments that emerge outside of the traditional financial system. Now, the Recovtech project has been a collaboration between BFA Global and CCAF over many months, as you will see. And I would like to sincerely thank BFA Global, particularly Nosa, Matt, Michelle, Kevin, and the rest of the team for their able leadership of this project. To the various participants from the FinTech ecosystem, including regulators, FinTech innovators, and other stakeholders who have been involved at various stages, from the scenario exercises to the cross-regional Techsprints, and in the subsequent development of the proof of concept. Thank you very much for sharing your time and expertise. We trust that this has been a useful program, and we hope to continue to engage with you beyond this event. Special thanks also goes to our sponsors, the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, or FCDO. Finally, I would also like to recognize the invaluable support of my other colleagues who have been leading this project from the CCAF side, including Philip Rowan and Hunter Sims, whose faces you can see here on the screen, as well as other CCAF colleagues who have provided input at various stages of this project. Welcome all and enjoy the presentation. And with those few remarks, I will now hand over the virtual mic back to Nosa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I think our sentiments exactly. It's been an absolute pleasure working with CCAF, and we're enthusiastic about the potential of what we made together. All right, great. And speaking of things we have done with CCAF, so on the next slide, you'll see two major streams of work that we have been working on recently. The first is fintech regulation in emerging markets, and these are 5 comprehensive guides that provide a practical overview of the latest fintech regulations and are relevant to startups that are already operational or looking to enter the Nigerian, Kenyan, South African, Indian, or Mexican markets with their products. These guides are organized across business models, and they make suggestions about how to engage with regulators and also a mapping of key regulators. So at this point, we'll now share a link with you, which is the link to the regulatory decks. Please feel free to download them. I'm sure you'll find them very useful. The second piece of work we've been working on is the reason why we're here. So this is recovery technology, or Recovtech for short. So this is the Recovtech project. It's essentially, it's especially split into 3 parts. One is the scenarios exercise with a reference group. The second is the cross-regional Techsprint and POC development. And the third is our global symposium, which we're having here today. This project covered 4 markets, so Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. We'll go into more detail about the project later. So if you can just move on to our next slide. So now we will talk about the defining question. So like with every quest for a solution, ours started with an open question. And that open question was, how can financial authorities and fintech innovators best support economic resilience, recovery, and inclusive growth post-COVID-19? So what is it that we know about COVID-19 and the effects it has had? So one of the things that has become clear is that COVID-19 has brought a lot of disruption to African economies, and financial authorities are in need of timely and granular data to be able to craft intervention. We also know that the existing data sets are lagging, sparse, incomplete, as the case may be. And it's also clear to us that the MSME sector has been particularly impacted negatively as a result of this. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a ray of hope. We know that fintech and big tech firms have been key in crafting responses to the COVID crisis, especially through digital financial services, and also provide timely intelligence. So if you're moving on to the next slide. So you may want to ask the question, why the focus on the MSME space? As I'm sure a lot of people in this room are aware, 80% of all enterprises in developing economies are in the informal sector. And we also know that a lack of consistent and high quality data has presented big challenges to designing both public and private sector interventions. And there is a need for higher quality statistical information about the sector. And the reports we're quoting here is an IFC report, and I think there are so many other reports that sort of resonate around this. Great. So moving on. So now that we have stated the driving question and we've explained the problem that needs to be solved, we'll tell you a bit about how we're trying to solve this problem. At this point, I'll invite our technical lead, Matt, to take you through the proof of concepts. Matt?
Great. Thanks so much, Nosa. Yeah, we can jump right to the next slide. So before we dive into these proofs of concept that we'd like to show you today and demonstrate for you, I think that's the really meaty part of our presentation that everybody's excited for. So I just want to give a little bit of context before we dive into that. We'll be seeing 2 proofs of concept. One that's a data exchange platform, which we'll get into detail on in a second. Kevin will be presenting that. And then a collaborative financing platform that I'll be presenting after that. So really, like, as we're going through these, we want you to be thinking about use cases within your own organizations. So these are proofs of concept. They're not full production deployments. They're not locked in the way that we're showing them necessarily. So we'd really love you to be thinking about, how could this be adapted to meet your needs? How could you see this being useful in your context? And really, we're actively seeking feedback through this exercise as well. And ultimately looking for institutional partners that may be interested in deploying this. And at the end of these demonstrations, we'll be asking you to kind of register your interest via our poll. How exciting do you think or useful do you think this thing is? So that's just a bit of context to be keeping in mind as we go through this. Yeah, really be thinking about how this could be useful to yourselves. And on the next slide, I think it's really important also to acknowledge, as Nosa did earlier a bit, that we are not just presenting this from BFA Global's perspective or from the CCAF's perspective. It's really the reflection of a lot of work from a lot of individuals globally. So during the scenarios development that informed all of this, we engaged with 40 or more experts over 4 countries from 19 regulatory authorities and over 20 private sector organizations. We then expanded that group during the Techsprints to be over 75 participants during 9 sessions over 3 days. And for the validation phase, once we had some proofs of concept to show individuals, we deeply engaged 9 representative champions across 5 regions, some of whom are shown at right here. And they collectively have over 100 years of experience in the space that we're building these tools for. And we received over 100 distinct points of actionable feedback. These are not just, I like it or not. These are, I want to see this feature go this way for this reason. So it was a really deep set of engagements. We're reflecting the work and minds of all of these brilliant individuals here. So with that, I think, I'll turn this over to Kevin, who's going to be showing us a demonstration of a data exchange platform that's been deployed by an institutional partner as part of this narrative. So Kevin, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Next slide, please. Great. First demo, we will be reviewing the MSME data exchange platform. This tool facilitates the exchange of real-world MSME market data. The data made available through the platform will grant both public and private sector actors with insights that will enable more informed lending and policymaking decisions. Let me introduce an ecosystem enabler persona we have created named John. John would like to use MSME data exchange platform to get a more complete view of his market. Without this platform, John is limited to using only his own data or data provided through partnerships. This data may be incomplete or proprietary, which will limit its impactfulness. The MSME data exchange platform allows John to find new data and partnerships. When John finds a data set that would help him better understand the market, he can propose an exchange using either the data he has gathered or by paying for access. Once the exchange has been completed successfully, John can use this new data to augment his understanding of the market. Now, let's jump into the demo so I can show you how this works. You should now be able to see the landing page of the data exchange platform. Before John can gain access to the platform, he must first create an account. The first step towards creating an account for John is to profile information. This includes giving information such as his name, email, password, and sector. Here we can see that John fulfills his role as an ecosystem enabler by working in the fintech sector. Critically, John must also provide a form of identification, such as a photo of his passport, to facilitate KYC. Next, John must secure his account using two-factor authentication. He does this by providing his phone number and then typing in the code that he receives. With the account now secure, all that's left is to provide some of the use cases he'd like to facilitate on the platform. As we saw at a previous step during account creation, John works in the fintech sector. Additionally, he also has received permission to share anonymized finance data. Based on this, John will select that he wants to exchange data as his primary use case for the platform. John now has the option to provide tags, not only for the data he has available, but also for any data he hopes to receive from the platform. These tags will be used by the platform in order to recommend datasets and intelligently help John find viable exchanges. While John may have many interesting use cases for this platform, the one that we will focus on today are trading John's finance data for an SME dataset. With the last fields populated, he can now finish creating his account. After John confirms his email, he will be granted access to the platform. The first page John will see is the data marketplace. This page shows a list of data sets that John could possibly trade for. Using the use case information John had previously provided, we can see the platform has already recommended many different SME data sets that John might find interesting. In the event that the data sets shown aren't sufficient, the marketplace has filters on the left-hand side, as well as a search bar at the top. However, the first option, SME transactions from Kenya, seems to be a good fit for John. This takes John to the data detail page. From here, John can see a few sample records from the dataset. This preview can be useful for understanding which columns are included and the format of the data within. For example, here John observes that the date column does not include the transaction time. However, for his use cases, this is not a deal breaker. John can also view a summary of the data. The summary page contains histograms informing John of the overall shape of the data. These charts help John understand things like the distribution of the transaction dates and the ratio of successful transactions compared to failed transactions. The summary page is able to give John confidence that the dataset will meet his needs without exposing additional records. Lastly, John reviews the dataset's documentation to ensure that the data is compatible with his team's data exploration tools. He notices this dataset can be accessed via an API, which is preferable due to its ability to provide John's team with regular updates as new data becomes available. Before locking in on a decision to exchange his finance data for the SME dataset, John also sees that this data has been vetted to comply with local regulations, making it a safe bet to proceed with the exchange. Additionally, if John does develop any concerns or encounters any problems with the dataset, report this dataset to the platform authorities to get help resolving any issues. This dataset looks perfect for John's needs. John can also see on the left-hand side that the company who has provided this data, Lender Inc., has expressed interest in obtaining finance data. However, before John can propose to exchange his finance data, he first needs to make it available to the platform. He can do this by clicking the Add Data button in the top right corner. There are many different ways of providing data to the platform, including direct database connections and CSV files. However, John knows that his data is available on an API, so he makes the selection. Here, John can provide details about the finance dataset. This information will be used to help Lender Inc. understand what they will get out of the exchange. John can also indicate if this dataset should be publicly visible on the marketplace, where others may view the information provided and propose additional exchanges. To get started, John will supply the dataset's name, description, tags, hosting location, and visibility. Next, John must provide the credentials that grant access to this API. The platform will use these credentials both to generate the summary we saw previously on the data detail page and to also hold the credentials in escrow while an exchange is being proposed. Finally, John must upload the API documentation. This will be used to populate the documentation page of the dataset and to help the platform interpret the data it receives from the API. With the host, credentials, and documentation now uploaded, the platform will show a preview of the data to John. This preview not only lets John validate that the intended dataset is the one being uploaded to the platform, but also gives John the opportunity to sanitize the data being provided. To sanitize this data, John has the option to either remove entire tables or entity types, remove a particular column from a table, or to anonymize the data within a column. The sanitization mechanisms help John protect any personally identifiable information from being exposed on the platform. This means that John can quickly and easily comply with local regulations without needing to redevelop parts of his API. Now that the data is safe to upload, John can tick the box acknowledging that local regulations have been complied with, and he can submit the data for approval. After the dataset has been reviewed by platform staff, John can see it is now available on the All Your Datasets section of his company's page. He can now propose the exchange with Lender Inc. After navigating back to the SME Transactions in Kenya page, John will click on the Exchange Data button to begin the proposal. Next, John will specify the data he would like to get and give, as well as a fee model. In this case, John selects data exchange, as he doesn't expect the need for licensing fees. Finally, John can provide an introduction to Lender Inc. to kick off a conversation. On this page, we have switched into the Lender Inc.'s account. We can see that Lender Inc. has been notified in platform of John's data exchange proposal. However, platform notifications are also available via other channels such as email and SMS. Additionally, both John and Lender Inc. have been entered into a conversation where the two parties can discuss the terms of the agreement. If a change needs to be reflected in the proposal, either party can navigate to the data exchanges page to facilitate a counteroffer. This page shows all of the pending exchanges for Lender Inc. To update the terms of the proposal with John, Lender Inc. can press the counteroffer button. Lender Inc. can select an update to the agreement from the list of the available options. This will be sent back to John for evaluation. Once both parties have clicked the accept button, then the data exchange becomes active. This means that the credentials stored in escrow have now been shared with both parties. These credentials can be seen predominantly at the bottom of the active data exchange card. Now that the data exchange is complete, John can return to the documentation page for information on how to use this data. This concludes the demonstration of the data exchange platform. However, this demonstration is just a starting point. We have received numerous points of feedback from champions we have worked with that we were unable to incorporate into this demo. Some of the great ideas shared include possibly requiring a national ID or bank ID card in order to automate the KYC process, enabling more equitable exchanges by adding alternative data access mechanisms, such as purchasing access using credits that are earned by uploading data, or by adding role-based permissions to enable multiple members of an organization to interact with the platform based on their individual responsibilities. These are just a few ways that the platform could be further enhanced. However, for us to know which of these features are worth pursuing, we're looking for partners who can provide this feedback. If this platform seemed useful to you or your organization, please let us know in the poll after the next demonstration. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Matt, to show off the collaborative finance platform.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. Wonderful demonstration. I hope that everybody in the audience is really, your wheels are churning and thinking about exactly how this might be useful for you with a few tweaks or adjustments. Yeah, so as Kevin mentioned, we'll now move into this demonstration of an MSME collaborative financing platform. We'll be tracking a different persona here that we'll see on the next slide, which is more to do with this particular platform. So the Open Finance platform is really about allowing users to access and contribute de-identified or synthetic data to test and calibrate various models and algorithms against this data in a sandbox environment. So as an example of this, we have Julia, who's the head of data science at a lender. She wants to use this comprehensive synthetic data set with representative distribution to better understand which specific data points are her model's strongest indicators of creditworthiness. So without the platform, she's really only limited to what data is on her own proprietary platform. She can really only test her model on what her own company has seen in terms of MSMEs. So this really limits both in terms of number of MSME records as well as attributes. So like the metrics which we are looking at MSMEs through. And this data outside of this platform would be prohibitively expensive to acquire as a single market actor. But this platform really enables her to kind of run her model against a much more comprehensive data set. For instance, a data set representative of the entire market to better understand which specific segments she should target, and again, which indicators are most valuable from her model's perspective. Finally, a centralized representative database is not meant to like replace her efforts. It's a testing ground to augment her in-house efforts, after which she can take her learnings and reincorporate them back into her proprietary platform. So with that context, we'll begin the demonstration. So here we see the finance platform login screen. It's a very simple login screen, just a name and email, organization, and password that's needed here. So Julia simply enters her information and clicks create account. We do have similar controls to the data platform, wherein validating an email address and whatnot is also required, but we're not demonstrating that here for the sake of time. So Julia now comes to this datasets page and reviews a number of different datasets that are available to her from the platform. So these datasets are curated by the platform host, as well as contributed by various users. So we can see all the different companies on the platform here. We can choose to follow them if they look like somebody that's interesting from the perspective of our use case. So for instance, Julia may want to follow somebody working on SME lending. But in the immediate term, she's really interested in data sets. And specifically, this Nigeria SME transaction data sets catches her eye as something that she wants to test. Her company is considering deploying in Nigeria. They have a Nigerian entity, and they're really interested in testing how their model from another country might work coming into Nigerian market. So Julia can simply click into this data set, review that the data that's available in this data set is interesting to her. So annual turnover is something that's already in her model, but she does not have company registration number or borough county or percent owned in her data set. So this looks super interesting to augment her own proprietary data set. She then moves to the documentation page to understand how this can be accessed. And this is really wonderful. It looks like it can be accessed via an API, which works well with her platform. And it's got this sample code here to connect to her integrated development environment for actually working with the model on this data. So this looks great. Julia then proceeds to preview the data. It looks like this data, again, is like exactly what she's looking for. However, there are some columns that she was hoping to see here that she doesn't yet. So given that this is a synthetic representative data set, she can say add columns or compute columns based on what are already here and fork this data set for her own use. So for instance, she can click add a column here. And in her own data set, she really wanted to see in her current country, she has a count of financially strong acquaintances of this particular MSE. And this is typically a log normal distribution she has noticed in her own data set. And that it runs from a minimum value of 1 to usually a maximum value of 5. And these are all whole numbers. So in order to test her algorithm on this synthetic data set, she can simply fabricate a representative distribution and add that into this data set. Similarly, she can compute a column from existing columns. So in her own data set, she doesn't work with assets and debts, but works with net worth. Fortunately, the platform allows a column to be computed from the existing assets and debts columns. So in this case, net worth equals assets minus debts, and she can simply add that data set. So with those updates in place, she's ready to kind of experiment with this data on the platform and take a look at how they might be useful in her own algorithm. So she can do this simply by clicking add to experiment and choose from the list of her ongoing experiments, which she would like to incorporate this into by simply clicking on one of them. And she can see here in her integrated development environment, after pasting the code snippet in from the documentation, that she's getting some really decent results here. She's really happy with the way that her algorithm is performing, but she did want to see if there's anybody else on the platform that's used this similar data set to accomplish similar goals. So before she publishes her own experiment for others to view, or simply keeps it private for her own use, she takes a look at the other published experiments available on the platform. So here she sees a couple of experiments that are available, and this credit analysis one really catches her eye. Julia clicks into here and sees that actually this other company has done a pretty decent job of true positives and true negatives versus false positives and false negatives. The confusion matrix looks decent. It's getting similar results as she's getting. And she'd like to kind of understand more about how they got there. So I think that, Julia might be interested here in proposing a collaboration between Lender Inc. and her own company. She simply clicks propose collaboration. She offers in this case that she'd like to use this credit analysis to offer loans from her own algorithm to their customers. And she's curious if they'd be able to provide additional data. So she simply sends a message kicking off the collaboration process in a similar manner as we've seen previously. Just to mention here, we realize that people are running around in their daily lives. They're not sitting on this platform all day. So similar to the data exchange platform, Jack and Julia are able to configure their accounts to mirror these messages in either SMS, email, or other channels to make sure that they're aware of the action happening on the platform so that they can return. Similarly, not everybody has a laptop that they're carrying around with them all the time that they can pop open between meetings. So all of the channels that you've seen here, all of the pages that you've seen here in both demos are mobile optimized so that any user can simply pop open their phone, take a look at their messages, take action on these messages, whether it's approving an exchange or whether it's agreeing to a collaboration on the finance platform. We make this as simple as possible for people. Finally, I just wanted to list one enhancement that we've discussed with a few stakeholders. Beyond what we've seen here, which is kind of bilateral collaboration, we've also been discussing the potential for hosting a challenges section in this platform, which would encourage group collaboration across a number of problems. So you can think of this as being similar to Zindi or Kaggle type competitive data science platforms, but with a very specific niche and access controls that are tailored to this particular community and set of use cases. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. And this concludes the demos. As I mentioned, we'd really love to hear what you guys think. So we'll please be sharing Q&A in the chat throughout this if you have questions on this. But in the immediate term, we're going to open up a poll. And please let us know your thoughts about how impactful you think the solutions shown today could be for your own organization or your own personal role. We'd really love to hear that. We've got about a minute here to receive in. We'll just pause and give you guys some time to respond. So as you finish your responses and are waiting for kind of the rest of the group to finish, we do see some questions already coming through. So please feel free to continue sharing these questions in the chat as we wait these last few seconds to wrap this up. Okay, great. It looks like we're completed. Thank you all to those of you who have responded. For those of you who haven't, we'll look forward to your responses in the new polls coming up later in the presentation. But for now, I'd like to turn it back over to Nosa to take us through a little bit of background on what got us here.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Matt and Kevin. That was a very brilliant demonstration. So thank you for that. So the question is, how did we get here, right? So I'll be talking a little bit about, all the work that has gone in over the last year. So on this slide, you'll see a cross-section of organizations that have participated in this project. Some organizations have participated directly, and in some cases, we have had participants from these organizations, but they participated individually. So we're extremely grateful, and this just goes to show like the depth that we went to come up with these solutions. So on the next slide. Yeah, so now we'll be talking about the 3 phases of the project. So as we mentioned at the beginning, this project has been split into 3 phases. The first phase is the scenario planning exercises And this involved a reference group of regulators and ecosystem actors, so both from the public sector and private sector in each of our target countries, so in South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Egypt. The second phase involved coming out with the problem statements, and these problem statements eventually sort of converged around data and analytics platforms to be designed for MSMEs, to be able to increase the access to digital financial services and drive inclusive recovery. The third phase had to do with the Techsprints and the POCs, and pretty much during this process was where we did the prototyping and the validation of the two solutions. So I'll give you the highlights of each of these phases on the next slide. So I need to emphasize that these are highlights. It's not, there's only so much space we can have on a slide. So these are just some of the key points. So the way the scenario planning process started was first with literature review. So here we have captured some of the literature that we reviewed as we started thinking about this solutions to this problem. So we looked at things around open finance, open data, MSME learnings. After the literature review, we engaged with a diverse set of expert stakeholders, and these are the people that we refer to as the reference group. So we had reference groups in each country, and these were 40+ experts from the 4 countries. 47% of our participating experts were women, so we're happy with that spread. We also had 19 regulatory institutions who were also represented. So for the highlights of the second phase on the next slide, so with this reference group, we had collaborative exercises. These exercises were in Q4 of 2020 and Q1 of 2021. And essentially this group of stakeholders essentially contributed the problem statements that we now started trying to filter through to come down to which problem statements to specifically address. I think in total, we had 23 problem statements. And if you look to the right, you'll see a table which shows the dominant problem statements that came out of each market. And you begin to see the convergence I spoke about around sectoral data platforms, embedded finance, or offering solutions to MSMEs. Now for the third phase on the next slide. So these were the Techsprints. And these Techsprints were 9 sessions that took place over 3 days. On day 1, we focused on design. On day 2, we focused on data. And on day 3, we focused on development. We also have snapshots of some of the design tools and canvases that we used during this process. So we had 75 total experts, 51% of them were women. We had 4 countries represented, and some of the outputs from this were the value propositions and data flows for MSMEs. And these were around 4 personas, and the personas were regulators and policymakers, incumbents and fintech lenders, telcos, and data science providers. So on the next slide, we'll see what the outputs of this Techsprints were. So we had 2 key outputs. So the first key output was an open MSME data platform that sources real-world data and from which private and public sector participants or actors can gain meaningful insights. The other part of this was the data taxonomy. So being able to enumerate what data was relevant to this and be able to define that to create a digital footprint for MSMEs. And the third part of this was what we call the matchmaking, which was essentially participants being able to talk about their asks and gives. So what data do I have? What data am I looking for? And where can I get that from? So that was the matchmaking. Moving on to the next slide. So the second key output from this Techsprint was a collaborative open MSME finance platform. And this platform will allow stakeholders to be able to share synthetic credit data and be able to use it to test their models and other use cases. Interesting to highlight here was our focus on collaborative due diligence and identification standards. You'll agree with me that when it comes to finance platforms and finance tools, these are key areas to be able to ensure the functionality as well as the integrity of the platform itself. We also focused on governance. And I think this is extremely important when you are looking at a platform like this that is not only multi-sectoral, but at the same time also cutting across international boundaries and has to take into consideration the different regulations in different organizations and who takes ownership for what parts of the platform. Great. And after speaking about these two key outputs, I will now hand over to Matt to tell you about the journey from the Techsprints to the proof of concepts, which you're seeing here today. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Nosa. Yeah, so putting everything together that we've seen so far, this is just really a high-level summary of the steps that got us here. So we started actually before June, well before June, with the background research and the phase 1 activities that Nosa had mentioned. But from there, we developed the scopes of work and design docs from the Techsprint, and already began receiving initial feedback from our thought leaders and champions. So these were text-based, summaries of what we had learned through the Techsprints. From there, we moved into a very low fidelity kind of set of wireframes and mock-ups, and began collaborating with Fintech Sandpit on mapping their existing technical features to the high importance use cases that we had received from the Techsprints. We then at this point received a second round of feedback from thought leaders. From here, we moved into incorporation of those initial rounds of feedback into the clickable interactive prototypes, which we then began sharing and testing with the champions in depth. And again, these were from public and private organizations to make sure that the use cases can be valuable for both private sector players, as we demonstrated today, but as well as public sector players who are interested in assessing, for instance, stability or financial inclusion metrics by accessing new data and experimenting with those data. And finally, we did some final iterations on the proofs of concept and launched those today for your feedback. So this is just, again, a very high-level summary of moving through where we started and where we came from. And we're very grateful for everybody's participation, including this audience today, that helps us to kind of continue to improve and focus the use cases and value of this set of proofs of concept. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So now that we've covered the proofs of concept, the background, I'd like to turn it over to Michelle to speak a little bit about where we're at today in terms of traction and partnerships, and what's next in terms of calls to action and who we'd like to be speaking with next. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, team, for a great presentation. As mentioned, I think after showing all of you the two platforms, I'm sure the question is, what next? We've already seen some early traction as we continue to engage the thought leaders in the different markets. We saw that they were able to easily identify gaps and find use cases of how to either use one or actually both of the proof of concepts and platforms. We are actively right now engaging with three partners in terms of potential deployment, either both based in sub-Saharan Africa and the MENA region. But we'll still love to talk to more people and are looking for additional institution-led partners. So we would love to hear your ideas, feedback, and actually how we can tailor the solution and the platforms to be able to have more use cases for the different markets. And I think our call to action is, please, if you're able to learn more about it and you want to listen to more about this, please complete the Google form, which is also going to be shared on the chat as well, to be able to actually to schedule a deep dive with one of our sectorial experts, but also our technical experts, to go through that whole platform and how we can help you to go through it. And we really look forward to hearing from you as well. Next slide, please. As usual, I think we're going to open another poll. We want to know how you or your organization will be, if you're interested in the data exchange or finance collaboration, what we demonstrated today. We would love to hear if you want to speak to us. So please select either yes or no. Give us a sense of how many people actually want to do this. I will give you a minute to respond. We have about 20 seconds until we fill it up. Great. Thank you so much for everyone who has participated. To the next slide, please. And finally, if you'd like to learn more about our work and all the insights we've gathered through this whole process, please visit our website. We've done different blogs on understanding on what the challenges have been and the impact that this platform might actually have in the different markets. We will also share with you the link of the Recovtech blogs on the chat as well. And finally, we'd like to just thank all the participants who have been with us through this whole journey. Everyone who has been able to actually give us feedback as we continue to develop the POC. And we hope that it's going to be useful for and more people as we move along. We've now, next slide, please. We have reached the end of the presentation. I know we've had a couple of questions as we're doing this presentation, and we love that. So I'd like to take it back to Nosa to answer some of the initial questions and feedback that we've gotten. But please continue asking the questions in the chat, and we'll make sure we answer them as we continue. Nosa?
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I think we've gotten to the part that everyone is really excited about, the Q&A session. So I'm just going to go right into it. So we have some questions from someone called J3. I hope I didn't murder your name. And the question, he has two questions here, or more than two, but let me go with the first two. I think maybe these questions, maybe Matt, you can take them. And the questions are, how do we make sure that the data sets are of good quality? Is there some kind of rating that can be provided by other users? So Matt?
Yeah, indeed there is. We didn't highlight it today, but in the data views, you can see as part of each data card, there's actually I think 1 to 5 star rating that's available there. So people can, in addition to reporting data sets that are like non-compliant or otherwise not appropriate for the platform, which is what Kevin had displayed, people can also rate data sets on 1 to 5. Yeah, so that's definitely a feature already incorporated.
Okay, great. And another question from the same participants. Is there also some way of making sure that local data regulations are available to check? It currently assumes that people are aware so they can tick the checkbox.
Yeah, that's actually a wonderful question. So the initial design consideration was to make this as flexible as possible for various markets, whether that's a given city that wants to deploy this or somebody that wants to deploy it in a Pan-African context. So this is a decision that would be really dived into deeply as part of any kind of partnership talks and conversations. We do have the ability to kind of add additional links to guides on this. We initially mocked up a few of these guides, but they were specific to a given market. So to make this more extensible, that would be something that would be discussed in detail at deployment time and the initial design and tailoring phase of that. And we would make sure that any existing guides or PDFs or circulars or anything like this that are available could be linked to from the platform as is relevant to the given geography and context.
Okay, great. So we also have a question from Ntupan, who is trying to ask how this platform can be helpful. How this platform can really help regulators in making decisions. I'm happy to take that. I think I will use some things we've seen during the pandemic to give you a sense of, the actual application for regulators. So one of the challenges regulators have had, especially during the pandemic, was the fact that the MSME space is traditionally a bit hard to understand, a bit not so visible. I think in some places we even refer to it as the shadow economy. So in cases where regulators like central banks were looking at interventions for MSMEs, being able to offer them some kind of credit facilities to help them ride through the pandemic, it was difficult to get a sense of where these MSMEs were, what type of operations they were having, where would these credit facilities be most useful, most impactful, or even visibility on how they would potentially use some of these facilities. So a platform like this can easily help regulators have more visibility on the space and be able to craft interventions. I think if you want to look at other use cases, even in terms of just other due diligence and identification standards, it also helps to be able to identify these MSMEs and be able to classify them better, understand what regions or what areas or what sectors MSMEs are concentrated in, and even be able to see the impact of whatever interventions in terms of the growth of the actual MSMEs themselves. So I think those are just some of the use cases, and maybe anyone else, any of my colleagues, I think that wants to add anything else to that question should also feel free to.
Yeah, I would just add in quickly that like our team on the BFA side and the CCAF side have worked extensively with the regulatory group of participants, as well as participated in other public sector engagements. So I think both from the participant side, we had a number of public sector players involved, I think 19 regulatory authorities we mentioned, as well as on our side, we've got the expertise to kind of translate that into action. So yeah, I think it was not necessarily highlighted as part of today's demonstrations, but a really critical and key consideration in the design process. So I just wanted to reiterate that as well.
Okay, great. I see it doesn't seem like we have any more questions. If anyone has any additional questions, I think it would be great to pop them in right now.
Nosa, I do see one more about data monetization. Somebody, let's see. It's a question from Femi. Is there any data monetization involved? I'm wondering if that's something that Kevin wants to speak to as part of the data exchange platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so one of the ways that we had thought of incentivizing users to upload their data was to allow them to collect a fee for some of the data that they've provided. This could be done potentially on like a licensing basis, maybe a subscription, or maybe just based on the total volume of data, or even on the number of API calls that they make. So there's lots of different options that I think that could be pursued. But again, the end goal would be that that users are comfortable and have reasons to provide their data, and that they're incentivized to do so. We'd also discussed possibly using some of these fees, in order to, maybe make some of the exchanges a little bit more equitable. One of the things that continually came up in conversations with our champions is what happens when, one data set is vastly more valuable than another data set. Even if both parties want the data set, how do you, even the playing field? And we had also seen that this kind of monetization and licensing scheme could be, an impactful way of addressing that kind of an issue. So it is something that I think is an option. Again, granted that it is something that is wanted, as we get towards the development and deployment phase, of any of these tools.
All right, great. So yeah, it doesn't seem like we have any more questions. So I think we'll begin to wrap this up. So we just want to say a big thank you once again to the Mauritius Africa Fintech Hub. They've been awesome to work with. Thank you for this platform, and congratulations on our extremely successful conference. So thank you. Thank you very much to our partner CCAF. It's been a pleasure working with you. All the insights you've contributed, all the numerous calls, all the numerous reviews. I think they've all come together pretty nicely, and we're excited to see where BFA Global and CCAF can take this solution forward. There's obviously a pressing need for this type of solutions that can give visibility to the MSME space and be able to allow us to have access to higher quality data. So delighted to work with you, and thank you very much to the team at NIA 1, formerly called Fintech Sandpit. Thank you so much for all the technical input and support. We couldn't have done this without you. And finally, I'd also like to say thank you to my team at BFA Global. It's really been long, hard work. It's been over a year. I think to a large extent, we also felt some of the strain. So it wasn't just MSMEs, we also felt the strain of COVID, but in spite of all that and different changes to the plan, we pushed ahead. So super proud to have worked on this with all of you. And of course, to the audience, we're not here to speak to ourselves, we're here to speak to you. So thank you for being available. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your questions. And please feel free to reach out to us. We're very happy to talk to you, give further details, further information about how we can work with you and how these platforms can be useful to your organizations. So thank you very much. And with that, we come to the end of today's session. Have a great day.